amiguis, welcome to today's video. My name is Pam and I like to talk about books, and it's been a hot minute since I did a little book recap video, and that is because I've just been busy. Life has been lifing. I went traveling, I got the flu, I had to recover, and then just like life things that I've been busy with. So yeah, I've been reading. It's been a good reading month, more than a month, but I just haven't sat down and talked to y'all about the books that I've been reading in a minute. So I do feel a little bit rusty, and it's a lot of books that I have to recap. So I'm a little nervous about how long this is gonna take and how I'm even gonna be able to articulate my thoughts, but here goes nothing. Let's just get into it. I thought it would be fun to do because I'm trying to do this quickly. I'm gonna try not to spend too long on each book, just kind of brief overview, quick thoughts, but I thought it would be fun to do a sort of combo recap ranking of all the books that I'm going to talk about. So I'll start off with my least favorites of the past few weeks and then my top favorites. So let's do that. Here are the books that I've been reading lately. Actually, I'm already gonna break my little format that I just literally announced 2 seconds ago, because I read 3 memoirs in the past few weeks, and I don't usually rate memoirs. I just feel kind of weird about giving a number rating to a book about somebody's life, about somebody's experiences. So I typically just talk about my thoughts on the memoirs, but I refrain from an actual star rating. So I won't be ranking these with the rest of the fiction books. So let me just talk about the memoirs really quickly that I've read. There's been some good ones. The first one that I'm going to talk about is Careless People, and I think it has a longer title. I've been this year trying to journal my reading more, just to remember and reflect on my reads a little better. So I've been writing full entries for each of the books that I read, and this has just been helpful to organize my thoughts and make sure that I'm really taking in what I've been reading. So yes, this memoir is called Careless People, A Cautionary Tale of Power, Greed, and Lost Idealism by Sarah Wynn Williams. Sarah Wynn Williams, she is an ex-Facebook executive. She used to work for Facebook, and she was the head of the policy team. And, she worked really closely with the top Facebook people, including, of course, Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg, who I guess is a well-known Facebook executive, but I wasn't super familiar with her. But Sarah, she worked really closely with her and with Mark and with a bunch of other Facebook executives. So this is her story, mostly centered around her time at Facebook, but we start off with some of her childhood. She is from New Zealand originally, which is quite a coincidence because I just did a big trip to New Zealand. Just a coincidence for me personally, because I happen to go to New Zealand, but she talks about her childhood growing up there, and one big story that she focuses on is she had a very traumatic shark attack experience when she was a young girl on the beach in New Zealand, which is kind of crazy, but she talks about it because she really, when this happened, had to advocate for herself, because nobody around her, she was a child, and nobody around her was listening to her about the amount of pain that she was in after this shark attack, and she almost died, but she had to really use her voice and stand up for herself and be I'm dying, y'all aren't seeing what's going on inside my body, but I can feel it, I'm in pain, and I need help. And eventually she got the help that she needed, but it was yeah, a lot of the adults around her were just dismissing her, and she almost literally died. So that's like the big story that she focuses on in the early chapter of this memoir. And then we kind of skip forward to like her as an adult, and she's a policy person. She moves to the United States and she's an ambassador for the United Nations. And she really likes her job there, but she feels like she could be doing more. And eventually somehow she ends up at Facebook, obviously, but it's really interesting that she basically like pitched her own job to Facebook executives, and Facebook was like in more of its early stages, not like super early, like Harvard, the Facebook, like everything that we see like on the social network about when it was created. Like at this point, it was kind of like big and it was starting to become like a little bit ubiquitous in society. And Sarah saw like how much of an impact this could have on the world at large. And she was like, this is really interesting from a policy perspective. I want to get in on this. So she basically like created her own job within Facebook. So that's really interesting. But then as the memoir goes on, she starts getting more and more concerned and disillusioned with like the way that Facebook is being used across the world and the decisions that are being made by the people running this company. So that's really what the novel is about, just like how careless, as the title suggests, Facebook executives were with like the power that this global tool held. And yeah, it was a really interesting novel, really eye-opening and surprising, and like just some of the stuff that went on within Facebook and like some of the decisions that were made, and yeah, just like the carelessness with which it was all being done and the implications globally and politically. And yeah, it's just really fascinating, but like in a way that's a little bit scary. But yeah, if you're looking for a novel that has, or a memoir that has a lot of tea, this one really does. It has a lot of surprising stories about like Mark Zuckerberg and Cheryl, and yeah, just the way some of the employees and things at Facebook were being treated. Just very not surprising necessarily, but like, damn. Kind of a bummer overall for like society in general, but entertaining for sure. So that was Careless People by Sarah Wynne Williams. The next memoir that I'm going to talk about is Driven by Susie Wolff. This was an early copy. It is going to be published later this month. Maybe by the time this comes out, it would have already been published. It comes out April 28th, and I got an early copy of it and I listened to the audiobook. All the memoirs actually were audiobook listens. I love an audiobook for a memoir because it's usually the author who is doing the narration, and it's cool to hear stories about people's lives in their own words, in their own voices. So yeah, this one was by Susie Wolff, who is a big female figure in racing. I've been really obsessed with Formula One for the past few years now, and I know of Susie, of course, through her husband, Toto Wolff, who is the team principal for Mercedes F1 team, and he's pretty iconic because Mercedes was really dominant in the sport for quite a long time. He was a team principal and still is a team principal at Mercedes, but he was there through all of Lewis Hamilton's prime years when he was like dominating, winning all his championships. Toto was there. He kind of oversaw the entire thing when that was happening. And that's how I know of Susie. But I also know her because she is the director for F1 Academy, which is like this really cool new-ish initiative and racing series within the F1 world, which is one of the lower racing categories. So before reaching F1, drivers can go into like the lower categories, F2, F3, and now there's F1 Academy, which is specifically for women racers. So this is a really cool thing that's being done and promoted to encourage more women in racing, because there's been very few. And one of the few who have been really successful and prominent was Susie Wolff, actually. And yeah, this is just a memoir of her life, and it was really cool to see just how successful and extensive her racing history is. I was not aware of that. She grew up in motorsports, and she went through some stuff just in terms of like her struggle to continue racing. It really opened my eyes as to how much your life has to be 100% about racing if you want to be successful in the sport, and very few make it to the very top. There's only 22 F1 drivers in the entire world. Like, you have to have a big combination of skill, obviously, but also luck and also privilege, because it's very, very expensive to race for your entire life. So yeah, Susie is one of the few women to have made it up the ranks. She never drove as like a main F1 driver, and part of that is due to like some bad luck that she had throughout her career. So it was really interesting to see like how she overcame that, some of that bad luck that she had, which could have like ended her career. And I feel like if she hadn't had that strength and that drive to keep going, to keep being a racer, could have, yeah, very easily been the end of it. But she persevered, she pushed through. She also never became like a main F1 driver because of misogyny. Like, I feel like if she had been a man, things might have gone a little bit differently for her. But that's why, you know, she's now with F1 Academy, and through her initiatives, she's really trying to push for more women in motorsports. And this was just a really cool and inspiring memoir. Susie Wolff is incredible, and she's just like so chill and humble about it all. The memoir itself is very like matter of fact. I don't know, I feel like if I was in her position, I would be like way more I would have way more of an ego about it. I don't know, maybe that's speaking to my flawed character, but she's really like so chill, so humble about it, so just matter of fact about everything. And yeah, it's a quick, like simple memoir, but Susie Wolff is like a really remarkable person. So I really enjoyed it. And I also really enjoyed the next memoir, which is Dogs, Boys, and Other Things I've Cried About by Isabel Klee. Isabel is a dog social media influencer. I know her because of her viral videos when she fostered the dog Tiki, and that's what she's most well known for, is for these videos that she posts on social media about her foster dogs. She's kind of dedicated her life to rescuing dogs in need, and she works with an organization in New York. And every time that she gets a new foster, she kind of starts a new series on Instagram about them. And she's just like brought a lot of awareness about animal welfare and about fostering through her videos. And I really, really enjoy her in the content that she posts. And I really, really love all her dog videos. They're really sweet, but also like really informative. She really teaches people about fostering. And yeah, I fell in love with her and with Tiki through this one story of this dog, but have since continued following her. And I like her fostering content, but also just like her life content. And so I was really happy to read this memoir, and it follows the structure of her life through chronological chapters, mostly as an adult, and then each chapter she kind of punctuates it with a story of one of her fosters, and she like ties back like the lesson that she learned through going through something in life with the lesson that she learned through this particular foster dog. So it's really cool. It's mostly like a coming of age. She talks about her life as she's entering adulthood, her friendships, her heartbreaks, and it kind of felt just like listening to your friend talk about like what they've been going through lately. And it was very warm, and obviously listening to her talk about dogs was like heartbreaking, but also like heartwarming, because they're all like rescue happy stories. So yeah, it was just a really good time. I did cry a lot, but I really, really enjoyed it. She's a really good writer, so I definitely recommend checking it out when it is published. Also, April 28th, the same published day as Driven by Susie Wolff. So those are two memoirs that I've listened to recently that I really enjoyed and really recommend. So yes, those were the 3 memoirs that I will refrain from ranking, but I will say I enjoyed all of them and recommend all of them. So now let's get into the actual rankings and the fiction from the past few weeks. I feel like this is gonna make me seem like a Scrooge and a romance hater because both of the romances that I read this past month are going to be the first ones that I'm going to talk about and the lowest in the rankings, but sorry, I'm not a romance hater. I just didn't really vibe that much with these, and it might be a popular opinion because it's some big names in romance. The lowest in my rankings with a 2.5 star rating is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Ooh, sorry, Abby Jimenez lovers. I've given her a shot now with 2 of her books. The first one being Part of Your World, which is part of like this universe that Yours Truly is also in. It's like one of those weird like romance series where you don't have to read all the books in the series, but they take place in the same world. So I tried Part of Your World a few years ago and it was fine. Like I didn't hate it, but I wasn't in love with it. But I was like, maybe it's just this particular book. I'll give it another shot. I'll give Abby Jimenez another shot. And I did now with Yours Truly, which is a book that a lot of people love. A lot of my friends really like it. And I can see why, but it didn't do much for me. In this one, we follow a doctor as well, like Part of Your World. We follow Brianna. Let me check my notes. Yes, Brianna, who is Alexis's best friend, and Alexis was the main character in Part of Your World. But now this is Brianna's story. She's also a doctor at the ER that Alexis used to work at. And at this ER, another doctor just started working there, and his name is Jacob. And as soon as he starts working there, everybody hates him, including Brianna. They don't really get off to a great start. He's just, I'm not gonna get into it. Like, they don't really like each other, but Brianna, she's going through a lot. Her brother is going through kidney failure and is looking for a donor, and she's having to take on a caretaking role for him. And she also just had a big breakup, and through many different things that ensue, she ends up connecting with Jacob and then asking him to be her date at a wedding that she has to go to or something like that. No, sorry. Okay, it's all a little blurry in my head. He asks her to be her. Oh God. What the hell? Okay. Jacob has also recently been through a pretty bad breakup, and he's trying to prove to his family that he's okay because his ex left him for his brother, which is wild. So his family is like concerned for him, as you would be, and he's like trying to prove that he's okay. So he ends up like connecting with Brianna and then asking her to be his date to a wedding that his family's going to be at. Oh, to his brother's wedding with his ex. And yeah, they are like doing like this fake dating thing. It's the tropes of the romance are like coworker dating, fake dating. I don't know. It's not like this story and these characters that I didn't really vibe with. I think it's just Abby's writing style. I just find it a little, I don't know, like it's supposed to be like a rom-com, but I just don't find it very funny. Abby Jimenez likes to throw in a lot of like real world references that I just like don't personally relate to. And I was talking to my friends about this with this book and the next book that I'm going to talk about. I really like in romances when the characters are flawed and they feel like real people. And, you know, they don't have to be horrible people or they don't have to be perfect, but like somewhere in the middle where it feels like I can relate to them and they're going through something that, I don't know, makes them feel like real people, like not these perfect fantasy characters. And I feel like Abby Jimenez's characters just feel too perfect. Like they have very few flaws and the things that they're going through are all like external to them. And these characters are really going through it. Like they've had pretty hard lives and a lot of trauma and painful things that they're going through, but it all feels like external to them. It's not like they're not going through something internally, if that makes sense. Like they themselves are very like polished and perfect, and that's just not my preference for characters. I prefer characters with a little more like depth and realness to them. So I think that's one of my main issues with the books that I've read from Abby Jimenez so far. I also just have a weird feeling about her writing Latino characters and culture as a white woman. I know she is married to somebody Latino and she has, you know, experienced this culture through him. But yeah, it just feels a little icky. I don't love it. So yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna be continuing to read Abby Jimenez, but I gave her a shot. That was yours truly. And yeah, just not my favorite of the past few weeks, clearly. And the next one is also going to be a romance by a big popular romance author. This one I gave 3 stars, so it wasn't bottom of my list, but it was The Love Hypothesis by Hazelwood. Obviously very well known. I've been hearing about this book for years and about Hazelwood. She's very prominent. I think she's on a break right now, but before she went on this hiatus, she was like cranking out book after book, and I had never read her before, but she's obviously a very popular romance writer, kind of a hometown hero now here in Austin because she lives nearby, and she's always doing events at like some of the local bookstores here, which is really cool. I actually saw her. She was the moderator for an event for R.F. Kuang promoting Catabasis. Yeah, I just realized I've been in Hazelwood's presence before, and I really like her as a person. She's cool and funny, and this book was funny. It just wasn't my favorite. But if, in case you've been living under a rock and haven't read this like me or haven't heard of this book, it was originally a Reylo fanfiction, a Star Wars fanfiction, and I'm not gonna lie, it reads very much like a fanfiction, which might be a plus for some people, but is just not necessarily a plus for me. But if you're wondering, why do you have a really pretty special edition version of this book? It's because I went to the opening of a new romance bookstore here in Austin called Finney's Books, and I was just wanting to support, and we had chosen this book already as our next book club read with a few friends that I read books with, and I was like, they only had this like special edition, and I was like, I want to support this new bookstore, so I bought it. But it's really pretty. Look at these edges, very STEM, very sciencey. It has some illustrations, a little bit of a spoiler, but so yeah, this is just a really cool version of the book. But we're following Olive, who is a PhD student, and she starts fake dating Adam, who is a professor. So already, you know, a little taboo, a little age gap, not a big age gap, but yeah, professor-student relationship. She starts fake dating him because she's trying to convince her best friend that she's over this guy that she dated briefly, because her friend really likes him and wants to date him, and she's like, feel free, but like her friend doesn't want 2 weeks of girl code, blah blah blah. So she's like, no, I'm good, I'm dating Adam, you're free to date Jeremy. And then it just goes from there. My main complaint about this book was just also the writing style a little bit. I don't know, it was just a little like too silly for me. It's just like hijinks after hijinks, Olive and Adam finding themselves in like these ridiculous situations that would never happen in real life. It's a lot of like suspending your disbelief, which like I can do, but like to a certain extent. It was just like, yeah, too over the top ridiculous for me at times. And then I just really didn't vibe with the spicy scenes in this. They were just like not my vibe at all. One of the things that is very prominent in this is that Adam is described over and over and over again as like a huge, towering, monstrous specimen of a man. And Olive is described as like so skinny and little and tiny. And she's not even that small. She's like 5'7", which is really tall to me. I'm 5'1". Like, I'm tiny, but I'm never like, oh my god, everybody is so big and tall and giant. Like, that's just not how a short person moves through life, but that's how Adam is viewed by Olive. And it was just like a lot. It was a lot. And during the sex scenes, this is like very prominent as well, which just like gave me the ick. So yeah, I was like hovering maybe around like a 3.5, some moments even like close to 4 stars, but then the spicy scenes just like brought it down to 3 stars, which is like being generous, I feel like. But I did enjoy like the STEM, women in STEM representation of it all. It's cool that Ellie Hazelwood has like this actual background in STEM and is incorporating it into her novels. But yeah, just like it was a fun, goofy time, but I can't say it was like a new favorite or anything. But it was fun discussing it with my friends. That was the Love Hypothesis. So many books to talk about. I'll try to go faster. This next one is a novella that I listened to. It is the first book in the Murderbot series, All Systems Red by Martha Wells. And this is a quick sci-fi story about a robot who is designed and its primary purpose is to protect and to kill. He calls himself Murderbot, but he just doesn't really like, or it doesn't really have a gender, it's a robot. But Murderbot just doesn't really like the purpose it's designed for, and it hacks into like its own system and overrides it, and is still serving its purpose on a mission with some humans. But in its free time, it just likes to watch TV and soap operas and reality shows. But then shit gets serious and he has to like actually work with and protect the humans that he's on the mission with. So he has choices to make, and you know, some action and drama ensues. And I thought this was a good time because it's a novella. It's really short and you're kind of just like thrown into the action from the get-go. And it was a little disorienting for me at the beginning. I was like, what's going on? It took me a minute to like get into it, and by the time a minute is done, you're already like halfway through the novella because it's so short. So that was kind of the issue that I had with it. So I ended up giving it 3.5 stars because once I got into it, once I got my bearings, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the writing style, I enjoyed Murderbot, and yeah, some of like the questions posed by this. It was a good time, but I just wasn't like fully into it for a long time. So that is why it's not a higher rating, but it was a super quick listen. So I might continue with the series. I think there's like many more novellas in it, and some of them get like progressively longer. I think this is one of the shorter ones. And I enjoyed it enough that like I might go back in and continue, but still up in the air. I'm not like 100% hooked right now, but it was a good time, and it was, yeah, very quick, like I said. So if you're looking for something just like quick and fast paced, this was a good one for that. All Systems Red by Martha Wells. Next is Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. This is a literary fiction novel about a young man named Cyrus. He's an Iranian American student in college, and he is a little bit depressed, a little bit struggling through life. He is recently sober, but he did suffer with like addiction for a while, and he's a poet, and he's also an orphan. His mother, we learn, died shortly after he was born in a plane disaster that was caused by a missile that was shot by a US war boat. And this is actually a real thing that happened in the 80s. The US accidentally shot down a passenger plane that was traveling from Iran to Dubai and killed like more than 200 people because they mistaked it for like a fighter jet or something like that. So yeah, this is like a really horrible thing that was done by the US and was then like justified and not really like acknowledged as a horrible war crime. So yeah, in this story, Cyrus's mother died on that plane, and his father then immigrated to the United States to work at a factory farm, and he just worked his whole life like paycheck to paycheck, just trying to give him and Cyrus some kind of like life in the United States. And once Cyrus started college, his father also died. So now he is an orphan, and he is just struggling with like trying to find a meaning for it all. And he is really interested in martyrs because he feels like the death of his parents was so meaningless, and he's really fascinated by people who like chose to take their own life and give it a meaning, give their death like some kind of reason. So he decides to start a project on martyrs, and he hears about this artist who is dying of terminal cancer, and her last like art installation is to set up shop in a Brooklyn museum and just like spend her last days there just talking to people about death. So he decides to visit her and interview her for his book of martyrs, and he gets more than he bargained for because their lives like intersect in ways that he didn't see coming. So it's kind of like a little bit of a mystery within like this literary exploration about like life and the meaning of it all, and being a first generation son of immigrants and Iranian American culture. And yeah, it was really interesting. I gave it 4 stars. I wasn't always like Cyrus is a very flawed protagonist. He's not always likable, but he's been through a lot, so I can't really fault him for that. And the writing was just like very interesting. It's a very unique book and very beautiful and raw. And yeah, this was a really interesting one. Definitely unlike anything I've read before. Yeah, I enjoyed it, even though it wasn't like the most fun reads. That was Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. Okay, next I'm going to talk about 2 books at once because I finally read The Six of Crows duology. This has been on my TBR basically since I started reading again as an adult. And I don't know why I put it off for so long, but I finally read it. They're iconic for a good reason. Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. Part of the reason why I hadn't read this was because I was like being a book purist and starting at the very beginning. So this is part of Leigh Bardugo's Grishaverse. Just like this fantastical universe that Leigh created. And the first few books in this universe are the Shadow and Bone trilogy. So I read those 3 books years ago now. And I kept meaning to like continue in the universe to Six of Crows because that's what I originally wanted to really get to, but it just took me forever. But I finally did it, and I had a great time. I was not disappointed. These are young adult fantasy books, and we follow this group of like misfits in this city of Ketterdam, which is like a grungy city full of crime. There's like different rival gangs in the city, and one of our main protagonists, Kaz, is the leader of one of these gangs, and he is recruited for a big heist job, and he puts together like a gang of different people, each with like a different skill set, and that becomes our little group of protagonists that we follow throughout this series. And yeah, it's hard to get into because I would take forever just like trying to explain like the magic system and the goal of the heist that they're accomplishing. But basically the first book is a heist novel, and we follow like each of these characters that are part of this group, and we learn about them, and it's just a really fast-paced, good time, found family kind of book. And then in the second one, they are dealing with the aftermath of this heist that, you know, obviously everything doesn't go according to plans. So we leave off Six of Crows on a pretty big cliffhanger, and then Crooked Kingdom picks up right after that and like has to wrap it all up, and it's a lot. Crooked Kingdom, like Six of Crows was like just this heist, and it was fast-paced and a lot was happening, but it felt like very contained to like that single mission. And then Crooked Kingdom, just like everything unravels and like a lot of stuff is going on, and it was like very ambitious, and I feel like maybe a little too much so. Like I got a little bit lost in the sauce at times, but I still had a really good time. I actually ended up rating Crooked Kingdom 4 stars. Six of Crows was 4.5. But I wasn't like disappointed with how it ended. I thought it was really well wrapped up, and I just really, really enjoyed being in this world. It is a young adult novel, but it felt very dark and very well like crafted compared to Shadow and Bone, which felt very like, okay, this is somebody like in the early stages of writing like young adult fantasy, and I enjoyed Shadow and Bone, but this felt a lot like, oh, she's really like stepped up her writing, and it's a lot like wittier and quirkier, and like the writing itself was like really tightened up and really good. And yeah, I had a really good time with these. I'm glad I finally read them. They are iconic young adult fantasy series for a reason, and now I understand, and they are now very dear to me. I love The Crows, and I had a good time with the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. Okay, next I'm going to talk about a book that I read during my travels. Called Sky Daddy by Kate Folk. This is a literary fiction book. It's often labeled or like included in lists of like weird girl lit. Like that's kind of become like its own little sub-genre now. And I very much am a fan of weird girl lit. And I was a fan of this book. Before going into it, I had heard of it, but I didn't know too much. The extent of what I knew was that it's about a woman who is like physically and romantically interested in airplanes. So immediately I was like, okay, quirky concept. But I had heard that like it was really good, so I was like, from like people that I don't remember who exactly, but like somebody that I must have been like, okay, if they liked it, like maybe I'll like it. And because I was traveling and going to be on many plane rides during my travels, I was like, this will be fun to read on a plane. Wrong. Mistakes were made, because what I didn't know about the plot of this book is that not only is Linda, our protagonist, obsessed and like sexually and romantically attracted to airplanes, she believes that it is her fate to die in a plane crash, because she'll be on a plane and then the plane will recognize her as its soulmate, and in order to like unite them for eternity, plummet itself into the ground, thereby bonding them forever. So this part of the plot of the story I didn't know before starting this on a plane. And as somebody with like pretty severe fear of flying, it was not the best to read while on a plane. How Linda just keeps wishing and hoping to die in a plane crash. But, you know, I'm at the point in my fear of flying where I've just done exposure therapy a lot. I've been on many plane rides now because at some point I was like, there's a lot of places in the world that I want to go to, and I'm not going to be like beholden to my fears, so I just have to like get over it. I know the statistics, I know it's perfectly safe, like the chances of something going wrong are like so small. It also doesn't help that like, you know, funding to the FAA was cut and like all the control towers like so understaffed and overworked, and like there's been security concerns recently. Like that doesn't help, but like what are you gonna do? Like just not travel, not go places because of this fear? Like no. So I've forced myself through it, like white knuckled a lot of flights, and like I'm at that point where like it's always an anxiety thing at the back of my mind, but like I can get through it. And yeah, I had to like just mentally just laugh it off and enjoy the ride of this book, and I did. It's really like, it sounds really, I mean, the concept is very quirky and a little bit ridiculous, but inside of that is like a really poignant story about the need for a human connection. And one thing about me is that I am just always going to love a book about somebody who's like on the fringes of society and just finding a way to fit in and finding a way to connect with other people, and this is what that was. So yeah, I ended up really liking this book. I gave it 4.25 stars, but like the more that I think about it, and like now that some time has passed, I don't know, I think like 4.5 is probably closer to the correct rating. I mean, that's like decimal points, but like that's just like how precise I get into rating these things in my mind. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed this book, and I understand why it's like kind of becoming a viral sensation right now. I'm glad I read it, and it was, even though like not the smartest of decisions in hindsight to read it while I was doing a lot of plane travel, it did line up pretty nicely because the story takes place in the Bay Area. So Linda is always like going to SFO to watch the planes take off and land, and that's where she travels from. And my big layover for my trip was in SFO, so that was fun to like be there and be reading about it. And actually, SFO is also mentioned in the love hypothesis, so I was like, wow, the universe just works in funny ways. So that was Sky Daddy by Kate Folk. My next book was also related to my travels because we went to New Zealand, as I mentioned, and the impetus for this trip was basically that my partner is a really big Lord of the Rings fan, so he's always wanted to go to New Zealand where they filmed the Lord of the Rings movies and The Hobbit, and I've seen all the movies, but I can't say that like I remember them very well. And I haven't read any of the books. So before the trip, I was like, well, we're gonna be in Lord of the Rings land, so let me like get a little more acquainted with the Lord of the Rings world. But I wasn't ready for the commitment of the full Lord of the Rings series because I've just heard that it's, and based on the movies too, it's just like very dense and it's a big time commitment. Maybe I'll get to them eventually, but I did read The Hobbit by j.r.r. Tolkien. So this is obviously in the Lord of the Rings world in Middle-earth, but it's just a book that takes place before the events of the Lord of the Rings, and it was written as a children's book. So it's middle grade, it's very easy to read, but it's not like When I read it, I didn't feel like it was beneath me or anything. It's, you know, it's still like a good actual novel, and even though the audience is younger, like I had a really good time reading it, and it's just like an adventure book. It's about Bilbo, who is a hobbit in the Shire, and hobbits just live like very peaceful lives. They're not fond of adventures, but he is recruited by Gandalf to go on this quest with a bunch of other, not hobbits, they were not elves, dwarves. A group of dwarves who need a hobbit's help. So he is chosen by Gandalf, and he goes on an adventure, and he travels through Middle-earth, and they find themselves in many situations that they have to like find a way out of, and it was just like a really fun adventure book, and yeah, I really loved it. I loved being in this world, and I feel like it really added like an element of depth to my visit to New Zealand and to Hobbiton. And yeah, it was just a really fun time. I'm really in love with the Shire, especially. Just like, I love the Hobbit lifestyle. I want to be a Hobbit. I loved, you know, reading about Hobbiton, not Hobbiton. Hobbiton is what the set is called, but I loved being in the Shire, even though we don't spend a ton of time there, but it's really like the root of this book. And yeah, now I'm interested in reading Lord of the Rings. I know it's tonally and stylistically very different from The Hobbit because the Lord of the Rings books are not children's books, but I enjoyed the world, and you know, they're time enduring for a reason. So maybe I'll get into them eventually, but yeah, for now, I really enjoyed my time with The Hobbit. I gave it 4.5 stars. And we have finally reached the last book, the best book that I've read recently. And it also happens to be the book that I just finished a few days ago. And that was The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This book is a historical horror novel. The format of this book is really interesting and kind of trippy. We, at the beginning, are following this woman named Etsy. She is a PhD student, I believe, in like modern times in 2013, I believe, and she finds a journal that belonged to her great-great-great-grandfather, who was a Lutheran pastor in Montana, I believe, in the early 1900s. So we're in Etsy's perspective, and then it switches to the narration of her great-great-great-grandfather through this journal that she finds. So in his narration, we are introduced to a Native American man named Goodstab who comes to the pastor's church, and he asks for a confession. He's like, can we do like the thing that the priests do and like you listen to my confession? And even though this is not a Catholic church, Arthur Buchan, who is the pastor, he agrees to like listen to his story and hear his confession. So then the POV once again shifts to Goodstab's POV, and we hear about this story that he wants to tell this pastor. So most of the story, we're going back and forth between Arthur Buchan, his journal entries, and then Goodstab's story. So Goodstab is a Blackfeet Native American vampire. So we're hearing his story of how he was turned into a vampire, and he was turned the same day that this big, horrible, bloody massacre was done on the Blackfeet people. And this massacre is actually a real-life event that happened. It's called the Mariah's Massacre, and it's just a really horrible event where hundreds of Blackfeet people, mostly women, children, and sick elderly people, were killed by white settlers. And yeah, it's just like a very horrible thing in US history. So the novel kind of, obviously it's like a fiction fantasy vampire story, but it's rooted in like real life events and real life atrocities that were committed on the Native Americans of the United States. So yeah, it was a very tough read. We follow Goodstab as he's like trying to understand and cope with like his new life after he's been turned into a vampire, and he's seeing like all these atrocities that were done on his people and on the land around him and on the animals, and he vows to like avenge his people for what was done to them. And yeah, this is just a very, very interesting book. It took me a while to get into it because of like just the different perspectives and the format, and like each POV is written in like such a unique style and voice, and it just took me a while to like get my bearings. But once I understood what was going on, I got really hooked, and like the story gets like progressively like more and more intense, and it felt really long. I was doing like a combination of audiobook and physical book, and the audiobook is really, really good. Each POV has a different audiobook narrator, and they're incredible. Like I said, the writing style was very unique for each POV, and it was just very engaging and very like cinematic almost. It's like very descriptive, and you can see exactly what's going on. And it was very dark and gory and painful and kind of, I don't know, not fun at all to read. Not fun at all to be in this world, but it was very interesting, like very unflinching in the violence and the gore. But, you know, the real horror is like events that really took place in history. And yeah, I think that's just my favorite type of horror that's rooted in like real life trauma and like exploring like an alternative version of events. And yeah, I don't know, this is a really, really great book. Not the easiest of reads, like I said, but one that's touching on like very important things, and I think things that like are worthwhile to spend some time reflecting on, because these things are like not talked about in American history. They're often like swept under the rug. They're shameful and horrible things that were done, but things that absolutely deserve some reflection. And Stephen Graham Jones just does it in a very engaging and interesting, unique way with this book, and I really, really liked it. I gave it 4.5 stars just because of how long it took me to get into it, but I think it'll be a book that definitely stays with me for a long time, and it was my favorite of the past few weeks. And with that, we have come to the end. Hopefully this video is not too long, but yeah, I've just been busy with life, but I'm glad that I've been able to keep reading and that I've got some great books in my repertoire now. I'm excited to show y'all some video of my travels to New Zealand, and yeah, catch up with y'all soon again, because I'm reading some more great books right now, and I'm excited to talk to y'all about them next time. And I'm gonna go eat something because I'm hungry. But yeah, it was a good catch up. I will see y'all next time. Bye. Oh, and let me know if you've read these books, what you thought of them, and what you've been reading lately. Sorry, I'm just desperate to go eat something because I'm hungry. See y'all.